Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked? Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. We're delighted you're in class with us. And we broadcast 2 hours from high atop the Missouri Ozark Mountains. Mackenzie is engineering the broadcast today at GCN. I'm Vincent Finelli. If you'd like to call us, we're going to be talking about health. 866-582-9933. 866-582-9933. Stephen Heuer's with us. Welcome, Stephen Heuer.
Good morning, Vincent. Thank you for having me on.
You know, I am wired. I am wired. And it's your fault.
I know. Did you take the colostrum?
I'm going to take it as soon as the broadcast ends today, or I can take it during the break. And let's talk about that too. But I got to tell you a quick story. Class, SGN80.com. SGN80.com. That's Stephen Heuer's website. So Stephen sent me some carbon 60, C60, and I've been taking it for a couple days. Well, yesterday was the second day I took it, and I've talked to some of our instructors who are taking it. Dr. Richard Allen Miller's taking it. We have an instructor across the ocean who's taking it, and everybody who's taking it I've talked to is excited about it, and it's working for them. So, you know, I am very cautious when I try something new, so I took a small amount, and I took a little bit more, and then finally I'm up to 20 drops per day of carbon 60. And here's what happened, Stephen. So yesterday I was hauling hay. And when we haul hay, we haul it from one field to another. And I was driving the diesel truck with the trailer and these round bales of hay loaded on it. And it's a heavy load, but it's safe. It meets the legal requirements. So I was pulling this down the road, and all of a sudden, I saw this guy in a pickup truck fly up on my tail. There's no reason to do it. And he's riding. If the trailer had a bumper with the hay on it, he'd be riding my bumper. He's riding the tail of the truck, and it was annoying me. So I went another quarter of a mile, turned left onto our dirt road, and there he is. He's right behind me. He's weaving left. He's weaving right. This road is like 1.5 lanes wide. There's no place for him to go if I stay in a safe area on this road, riding my tail for another quarter of a mile. And I'm at the point where I'm going to make a turn left into one of the fields to unload the hay. And so Mrs. Finelli's in the truck with me. In front of us is our son, who has a bale on the front end loader and a bale on the back spear. So he's got 2,000 pounds of hay on this tractor, and I've got a full load of almost 9,000 pounds on the trailer, and this guy is riding our tail. And I realize that, it's the same thing. If this guy gets around me, he's going to crash into our son, who's just riding on a tractor without a cab. So it's not a good situation. And this guy must be in a hurry, and he's really annoying me. And this happens every single time that we move hay from these two fields. People fly up on us, whether it's motorcycles. They just can't wait. And it's a double yellow line on the road anyway. And all we do is go for, at the most, 1 mile. Double yellow line all the way, and people have to pass us on a curve, which is really dangerous for everybody. And so yesterday, I get to where the gate is, and I'm going to pull into the gate with this load of hay, and I stop the vehicle in the middle of the road, jump out of the vehicle, and confront this jerk behind me. It's like, I'm really energetic, and I've had it with this guy, and I've only been engaged with him for, maybe a mile at the most. And I looked at him, and he's my neighbor. And I just looked at him like, I didn't say anything because I realized he was my neighbor. If he wasn't my neighbor, I would have chewed him out. But I looked at him, and he goes, well, I knew where you were going, and, he was making all kinds of excuses why he was, like, trying to push me off the road. And I said, just move on. Just move on. And he looked at me, and I said, just get going. And what I'm telling you is, this carbon 60 is something else. And it's all your fault.
Gave you the energy to be confrontational, huh?
Well, it's not like I'm shy about confrontations.
No,
but
I know that.
Well, what I'm saying is...
confrontational in a good way, because you're just basically acknowledging that you are standing solid in the truth, and you're basically presenting that to the person you're dealing with.
Yeah. And I've had it with people trying to run us off the road on this very short trip. And, it's not like we're in the big city and a farm truck with hay on it is unusual. It's a common occurrence. And you would think that people who live in this village where we live, and this guy does. I mean, he only lives like a mile and a half down the road from, where we live. And, he sees me all the time. But you would think that people who are in this village would say, you know what, I need to back off, give him a little more distance so he doesn't feel pushed and pressured.
Yeah.
And I do that when I follow a motorcycle. If there's a motorcycle ahead, I give him 3 times the amount of distance that most people give him, maybe 4 or 5 times the distance. And that's a bad thing because the guy behind me will pass me to get closer to the motorcycle and push him. And I just,
right.
I think it's just common decency. But what I'm saying is, this carbon 60, to make a long story short, this carbon 60 has me wound up. And then when we got home, Mrs. Finelli went in one door. She was doing some other things. I came in the other door, and she came into the house and she said, how much carbon 60 did you take? First question. Not high. How much did you take? And she thought, this is, so she noticed. And my son noticed, and when I saw him, he said, what'd you say to that guy? My wife said, what'd you say to that guy? So the bottom line is, I feel great. And the story that I told you last night on the phone, I mentioned that I had a Myers cocktail. Actually, I had many of them with Norm Shealy to improve my health because I was close to death, literally. And after I had the very first one, my reaction was, I'm wired. I feel great. Well, I called my son after I had the Myers cocktail, and I said, hey, got a lot of things I want to do. Hey, I'm 30 years younger. Get ready, because we got a lot of things we got to do. That's how I feel right now. I feel 30 years younger. But the thing that's different is this is not going away. It seems to be staying with me.
Exactly.
And people have noticed that. People talking to me on the phone, off the air, people who I know, instructors, we chat, they've heard a difference in me. It's like I'm the old Vinny. And so I want to thank you. You can too.
Yeah. and your breathing sounds clearer, and your mind is sharper, and your words flow more quickly. Yeah, it's definitely improved you.
Yeah. I'm ready for another audit.
I don't know. Maybe you should run for office and work your way up to being the president. That's where we need you.
Somebody said that a couple years ago, many years ago. They wanted me to Vinny for president. I said, no, not me. What we need to do is have USA prepares. All of us hold the office of president. And I said, one of our guys, Mike Ma, did you get a chance to meet him at the expo? Mike Ma, okay. Well, Mike Ma, I'll tell you what he would do. If he were in the Oval Office and one of the Congress types got out of line, one of the senators, one of the representatives, alleged representatives, if they got out of line, he'd call them in for a meeting. And Mike Ma likes to play with guns, and I'm sure this is what would happen. he'd call him in for a meeting. They'd sit down, and Mike Ma would get up and he'd pace, and he'd hold that handgun in his hand. He'd be twirling it around, and boom, it'd go off, and there would be one shot Congress critter, and then and then Mike would say it was an accident. You know, just like with Dick Cheney. It'd be an accident. It wasn't meant to happen, but it was an accident, just like Cheney shot his hunting friend in the face with a shotgun, and it was just an accident. So nothing happened to Cheney. Nothing would happen to Mike Ma, because I'm sure it'd be an accident. And then the word would get out, hey, you don't want to be called into the Oval Office, because it would be terrible. So anyway, if it for president, USA Prepares, I think it'd be so much fun. I think it would be, we would probably be considered a reign of terror in Washington, D.C., because we would want truth, honesty. We'd want to know about UFOs and aliens. We would tell the people exactly what's happening, because they can handle it. We'd want lower taxes, smaller government. TSA would be out of business. I mean,
awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So
TSA, it's like this whole. It's like I tell people. I said it's like back in the 60s and 70s. There were incidences, plenty of incidences of planes being hijacked, and that never resulted in a TSA being created. The principle of a free country is that no one is suspected as guilty or suspect or anything. You're always suspecting the person that you're interacting with is a moral, conscientious, righteous, upright person. No guilt whatsoever. But our government successfully switched that so that everybody's suspect because of this whole 9/11 baloney, TSA baloney,
Yeah. By the way, since you mentioned airplanes, one of the dogs who has adopted us here at the farm, his name is D.B. Cooper, and named after the famous hijacker who hijacked an airplane and demanded $200,000 in cash, and then they thought, okay, no problem, we'll just get this guy at the other end when they land this jet, this passenger jet, and he jumped out of the plane with a parachute, never to be seen from again. D.B. Cooper. You can look him up, class. And so I named my dog after D.B. Cooper, and we just call him Cooper for short. So just a side story, and they're interesting people in history. And anyway, I'm wound up. Hey, when we come back, how can't help it. I can't. You know what? I'm going to have to hit the mute button when we come back, just so Stephen Heuer is going to get a chance. Shungite. We're going to talk about where it's found, what it is, the history, the healing, and the health benefits. So how many people have talked about shungite? Very few, right? Well, we're going to do it right here. USAPrepares.com. We'll be right back. Yeah, I'm wired today. I had my 20 drops of carbon 60. Came from Stephen Heuer. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you so much. I feel absolutely great. It's like a miracle. It really is.
Do you feel like your respiratory system is back to normal? Because it sounds pretty good.
Yeah, well, it's pretty darn close. It really is.
Yeah.
I've noticed an improvement. And, class, I've had a very serious, very, very, very serious lung disease. And it's one of those things that you can get at a hospital. It's the kind of thing that's you don't want to get it. I mean, you wouldn't even want to wish this on your very worst enemy. It's that bad. But I feel well. Let me explain it to you this way, Stephen. The studio is 17 steps upstairs from the main level of the farmhouse. Tall ceilings here. And so during the broadcast, I race upstairs, I race downstairs, I check the solar system during the breaks and that kind of thing. And one of the things I use to gauge my overall health, a real quick thumbnail guide, is how is my balance racing up and down the stairs? Well, sometimes, I might touch the railing just as a sense of maybe security. Man, I'll tell you what, since this C60, I race up and down the stairs. It's unbelievable. My balance is better. I don't need. One of the things that I try not to do is use a railing anywhere. And there are many reasons for that. Back in the 1970s, I learned that, when you're on an interview for a job, as I had been in the 1970s, you're watched for lots of things. Sometimes they take you in the men's room to say, well, let's go out to lunch and we'll have a bite to eat and let's go wash up before we go. And they want to see how many paper towels you use. They want to see whether you actually wash your hands. They want to see, hygiene. They want to see whether you're decorated with lots of piercings. If you're a woman, how many earrings you have. 3 pieces of jewelry is it. Okay, just 3. For wedding band excluded. So for a guy, it's typically just a watch and a wedding band. Not a lot of necklaces, unless someone has a religious type necklace, but not worn out outside like Mr. T on television. Would wear jewelry that you might chain your dog with that much. Chains. It's not. So they would watch that, and one thing that they would watch is they would take you up or downstairs to see if you had to hang on to the railing. And if you did, that was a sign you were in poor health, and you probably wouldn't get the job. They also looked at your shoes to see if you had loafers on. It didn't require laces, or whether you had laced-up shoes. And loafers were a sign of laziness back then. So all those things go into the equation. So since then, and since I knew about all these things, I don't use the railings. Okay. However, as I got less and less well with this respiratory problem, I'd find that I'd want to just have this security, not to hang on to pull myself up or downstairs, but just as a security. But I got to tell you, with C60, your carbon 60, nah, not necessary. Don't even think about it. I just now race up and down the stairs.
One of the things that I like to teach people when it comes to the microorganism subject is to focus on what Antoine Béchamp discovered in the 1850s and what Royal Rife discovered in the 1920s and 30s with this very powerful microscope, 60,000 magnifications, is that no pathogenic growth of a pathogen, virus, fungus, bacteria, would occur in a neutral pH of 7. So he did all kinds of cell culture work and proved that the microbe is really not it doesn't independently harm the body. It's actually more like nature's janitor to digest and decompose toxic, unhealthy tissue, and that's why colds and flus happen as a result of basically, toxic buildup, cooked food toxins, metabolic waste buildup, and, then there's Alexis Carroll that did studies in 1912. He started a study on chicken heart tissue and kept it alive for 28 years, far outliving the normal life of a chicken of 7 to 14 years. Basically, he showed that if the tissues were fed proper nutrients every day and washed every day, then the cell remained immortal. It never would die. And then one day the technician forgot to clean the cells and they died. And so basically it's the cellular terrain of the body is your cells are always making metabolic wastes, and the rate at which your body can excrete those metabolic wastes. And also there's damage done to cooking foods, and the damage done has to be excreted. And if it builds up, that becomes the food for the microbes. So it's always about keeping the body detoxified and in an alkaline state of neutral pH of 7 to protect yourself from pathogens.
Okay, let's talk more about that. And will you be weaving into today's discussion lime water? We're not talking about lemons and limes. We're talking about a different kind of lime, calcium hydroxide. Can we talk about that? Class Stephen Heuer's with us. Synergistic Nutrition. Synergistic Nutrition. Now, if you want to go to his website, sgn80.com, sgn80.com. And let me give you a phone number. Now, this is for help or orders. 888-988-3325. 888-988-3325. Now, if you are calling internationally and or you want a consultation with Stephen, now, please wait till we get off the air, okay? 864-895-6250. 864-895-6250. So, Stephen, during the break, I couldn't wait. I couldn't wait till the top of the hour. I ran downstairs into the kitchen, got some of your colostrum, mixed it in with your One World Way. My wife loves your One World Way. And she ordered, and she let me have some. She did. And I mixed it up into a shake. I've had some of. Is that okay that I mixed the colostrum with the One World Way? Put it in a container. Actually, it's a jar. It's a long, slender jar that I use when I make your One World Way. I mix it with
okay,
some.
but but there's all kinds of immunoglobulins and things in higher concentration in the colostrum than it is in the whey. And if you want to get the most therapeutic effect, you would take it like 30 minutes before you do the whey shake or other things. You'll still get the effects. It's just going to take a little longer to absorb into the system.
Okay, so I just want to have the colostrum. Now, just mix it with water?
Yeah.
Okay. Class, it's a powder?
It's fine. Yeah.
It's a powder, class. It's a kind of a light yellowish color, kind of like the color of butter almost, but it's a powder, kind of like the consistency of a heavy, heavy flour, very heavy. And you can mix that and shake it and drink it down. But I got to tell you, your One World Whey tastes really good. You know, some people are concerned about that. If they want to take a supplement and they don't like the taste, they won't take it. Well, that I don't agree with that. If I need a supplement, regardless of whether it tastes good or not, I'm going to take it. But this does taste really good. So for those of you who are wondering, it's if you're talking about One World Whey, this is like a treat. It's not like something that you've got to hold your nose and gulp it down. It's not like that. It's a treat. It's like dessert. It's fabulous.
I think so as well. And the other thing is about the One World Whey is that not only is it whey protein from grass-fed cows that's never been destroyed by heat pasteurization, so it's fully bioavailable, bioactive. It's also frequency encoded, so there's frequencies carried more strongly by the non-GMO maltodextrin and dextrose that are in there, and those frequencies activate your cells so that they will absorb the amino acids better and produce more protein and more energy, which is the conditions of a younger cell. So that's why we've had dozens of case histories of everything from resurrecting the 90-year-old out of her hospice deathbeds. She's getting back up with energy the first day she takes our product, and appetite comes back, and in 1 week gains 2.5 pounds, to a 3-year-old autistic boy having 7 lung tumors go away after 30 days on our product. It's a very unique and powerful product that basically, if people really understand how the body works, they will take 1 to 2 scoops of our product every day to ensure that they have lots of glutathione, reduction of inflammation, detoxification, healthy liver, and a long life.
Stephen, is it possible that what I'm experiencing with just 20 drops of your carbon 60 C60 is doing the things that I'm saying it's doing? Because I have a feeling that people are saying this cannot be. It absolutely can't be.
Oh no, yeah. The thing is that the studies that have been done on this stuff is so astounding that it's jaw-dropping amazing. There's a French scientist named Dr. Fatih Moussa, a very difficult name to pronounce, that took 3 groups of mice and gave them their normal mouse chow, along with 3 different supplemental things. One was just water. They all got their water, but one just had that as an addition to the chow. The other had olive oil, and the other had olive oil mixed with the fluorine. Another name for C60 is fluorine because fluorine is the shape of a soccer ball or a geodesic dome, a bunch of these hexagonal structures all in this round pattern. And so, the pioneer of the, geodesic dome was Buckminster Fuller. So the name of fluorine was to honor the Buckminster Fuller. So basically, he gave them to these 3 different diets to these 3 different mouse groups, and the mice were bred to live over 24 months. But when they, did this experiment, the ones that got the water lived 18 to 38 months. The ones that got the olive oil lived 35 to 58 months. But the ones that got the olive oil with the fluorine in it lived 59 to 68 months, which is over 2 times their normal lifespan. And when they did the autopsies to see the health of the organs, they were totally free of tumors, which is not normal. Normally, at the end of the lifespan of this particular genetic strain of mice, they have tumors in their body, and they had none, and their organs were in perfect health. And basically, and then there's another study that was done using fluorine and olive oil, and found that it was done on animals, and they found that they could increase the telomere length by 32%, which is more potent anti-aging supplementation than anything on the market. The previous, you could say, winner of having anti-aging effects was another nutraceutical compound that could increase the length of the telomere by 18%. Very expensive product. And so fluorine, or C60, naturally exists in nature. It's in, charcoal and carbon. It's found highest in this, rock in Russia called shungite. And in fact, there's, all this lore and history about people healing themselves drinking the water coming from this Lake Onega, that has this deposit. It's the only place in the world this deposit of shungite exists, and so this carbon-60 is naturally in the water. People drink it, their health gets restored. There's such, respect for this particular rock in Russia that back in the 1700s, Peter the Great basically had his soldiers carry a rock in their backpacks as soldiers, and that's why they believed that they won this war that was called the Battle of Poltava. And the actual compound C60, you have to break it apart to make it super efficacious. So when you take your shungite or your rock that's got the C60 in it, you have to use a laser to atomize and break apart the C60 into single C60 molecules. C60 is basically 20 carbon atoms all in this sphere, the shape of a soccer ball or geodesic dome, and it has 20 different valencies on it, which means it can have 20 sites where it can bond to a free radical or bond to a heavy metal or a toxin or a virus or a pathogen, kill the pathogen, remove the toxin out of the body, and basically give the cellular environment of your body this reprieve from all the free radicals that are naturally generated in the body, from all the toxins that are in the body, from all the pathogens in the body. These are all reduced significantly, so it's a major antioxidant. And then as a result of removing inflammatory chemicals, you end up having less inflammation or no inflammation, and that appears to be the ticket that opens up the body's ability to increase telomerase production. So the enzyme telomerase is what determines how long the length of the telomeres is, and the telomeres are just the ends of your DNA, that like the little ends of shoelaces, and every single time a cell divides, the telomeres shorten, and the cell becomes older and less functional. And so if you can increase the length of your telomeres, that's increasing how young you are biologically and how long you will live. And so there's even studies done on just good quality fish liver oil, DHA, EPA, and they basically took the white blood cells from people's bloodstream and basically divided them into 3 groups, 40-year-old people, and gave them this EPA, DHA, and the group that got the highest dosage of that over the course of 4 months increased their telomere length by 50 base pairs, which is, significant, which is another indication that it's all about reducing inflammation in the body, reducing toxic load, reducing pathogens in the body so that inflammation can go away, so the body, instead of spending its time trying to heal the fires of inflammation, can spend its energy towards your biological health, which is to increase telomerase and increase the length of the telomere. So literally, you are able to become biologically younger when you're taking a good quality fullerene C60 product. And there are other brands on the market, but this particular one that I'm working with, the man that makes it, he's kind of like a scientist in this field of carbon-60, and he's figured out how to atomize the carbon-60 into single carbon-60 molecules and suspend it in sunflower oil so that you get full maximum effect, because all the other brands basically are clusters of carbon-60, so the surface area is significantly reduced. You don't get the full effect because they don't have the science of breaking it down into single molecules. But yeah, it's special stuff, and I plan to be on it a long time because of the quality of life that it can give you. You're already getting significant results the first 2 days. I have a client friend of mine who, she had an actual scapula shoulder injury that she literally couldn't lift her shoulder up or nothing. And she took just, a dropper full of the C60, and literally in the same day, within a few hours, all of her pain was 100% gone. She could raise her shoulder, her arm all the way up again over her head, and she had an energy that she hasn't had in a long time. Just same day, amazing results, which is a sign that you're relatively healthy. That's pretty good that you're getting such significant results as a sign of how healthy you are inherently.
I'm listening intently as you're saying this, and I've been thinking, I got to tell you, though, that there's one effect of what I'm experiencing that is kind of different for me, and it's like I have ADHD. Now what's happening is I'm thinking about like 7 things all at one time, and I'm listening to you. Well, let me give you an example. I believe that there's something that's happening to me that is really improving my mental acuity. And I'm not exaggerating. Is that something that you've seen in your studies that happens?
Yeah, well, the natural result of removing any mercury from fillings past in your life, removing that out of the brain, and getting rid of the inflammation in the brain will result in your brain being able to produce the full spectrum of neurohormones and neurochemicals so that, you have maximum cognitive sharpness. And that's what I've noticed over the years. When I was heavily mercury poisoned, it was very difficult for me to focus and read and absorb information for any length of time. I had to spend more than the average amount of time studying textbooks to absorb the information and do well on tests. After I got my mercury out of my body and I was supplementing correctly so I had optimum brain chemicals, it's just like I can come up with all kinds of creative ideas and things that I never had experienced before because my brain's turned on again.
Well, that describes pretty well what I'm experiencing. I'll give you a quick story when we come back from this break, and then maybe we can talk a little bit about lime water. Stephen Hewer's with us, sgn80.com. I think you ought to consider calling him. No kidding. Class, I'm delighted to be broadcasting with Stephen Heuer, dear friend. And Stephen, I just want to tell you a quick story. So on the second floor of our farmhouse, I have a studio. I built a studio, but I want to move it to the first floor for a lot of reasons. And I like the morning sun coming in from I'm converting a dining room into our studio. So it involves installing network wiring, a lot of network wiring. It involves installing a router, network switches, lighting, converting some wall openings, which are arched walk-through, we'll call them doorways, but without doors. I'm converting these arched walkways to French doors with glass. And I need to finish the drywall. I need to spackle, and I need to put in all the trim moldings around the doors and the baseboard and all that. And then I need to paint it. Okay, and all of that was easily doable, but what was not, I couldn't really figure out one thing, and that was the lighting. It has two chandeliers in the dining room now, and I'm going to use them and leave them, but they're not bright enough for broadcasting. But yet I have these old paintings that I've inherited from the literal oil paintings from the 1800s, like the 1820s, very close to 1800, and there's some portraits that are very large that I'm going to hang on the wall. And I don't want to have this bright 5,000 degree Kelvin lighting. And I couldn't figure out how to do that part, where I could have the lighting so it would be pleasant for the wall decor, if you will. These paintings, these old paintings on really neat frames. Maybe I'll even put a picture of this studio on the internet at some point, but couldn't figure it out. Well, I got to tell you, a little bit of C60 came to me right away. I'm serious. And now, to do this lighting, it was kind of difficult because the wires are would be in the wall, and I didn't want to rip out the walls to put wires, all the way up to the ceiling. When I say up to the ceiling, I'm talking like 15 feet, 18 feet up in the air. Okay, I didn't want to do that. So I figured it out, and I'm just here to tell you that this Carbon 60 is unbelievable. And do you think other people who consider trying this will have something like the kind of results I'm having, or is this an anomaly?
It's not an anomaly. As I mentioned earlier, I had a client friend of mine that had the scapula injury, experienced complete 100% pain alleviation the same day she took the product. But what I followed that was that if you're in relatively good health, then you'll get these more pronounced results right away. If you're more compromised with some sort of disease process, more behind the eight ball, then it's going to require time to get the cumulative benefits, to notice it in a significant way.
Stephen, you and I have spent some time together at the Expo years ago, and I've got to tell you, you look way younger than the number of years you've been walking around on the planet. What do you attribute that to?
Well, of course, it's a combination of the supplementation that I do to make up for what's not in the food or the soil, resting enough. I have been behind the eight ball myself significantly over the years, which has forced me to become, a nutritionist so that I could solve my own problems. But in the process, you learn a lot more, and you're able to help a lot of people because it's just really unfortunate that most people think to go to the doctor, medical doctor, allopathic route when they have an illness. It's still common. I mean, even friends of mine, I just had a friend of mine that eating really healthy supposedly all these years, but came down with cancer and went right to the doctors and through their program and died very quickly. And, that's just because people are deprived of the knowledge they need to, deal with the toxic world we live in and compensate so that I've had cancer too, and I got rid of it pretty quickly with my protocol, which we talked about in the last interview. So there's just answers that people, whether it's diabetes, whether it's cancer, whether it's cardiovascular disease, whether it's osteoporosis, arthritis, there's answers that you can become free of your suffering if you know what to do. And that's what I've had to make my life about. So I tend to have most of those answers.
Mm-hmm. And lime water. Stephen, I have your lime water right in my hand. Oh, by the way, I took the colostrum, and it was great. So that's all consumed. Lime water. How does one consume your lime water to neutralize the pH to 7.0?
They want to take 1 to 2 tablespoons twice a day. They want to measure their saliva pH with pH paper every morning when they wake up. It should be 7. If it's below 7, 6.5 or lower, they need to take 1 to 2 tablespoons of the lime water twice a day to bring it back up. This is to make up for the fact that our food supply is so low in calcium due to the fact that no one's paying attention.
We're out of time. Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. For those of you new to the class, there are over 200 of us here at USA Prepares, experts in various areas. All of us are innovators. We are medical doctors, dentists, surgeons, CEOs, broadcasters, researchers, editors, authors, programmers, farmers, inventors. Well, none of us is capable of holding down a job. Yeah, it's true. And I'm delighted to introduce to you your newest instructor. His name is Robert Stewart. Let me give you a quick bio of Robert Stewart. 34 years old. He's a son of the West Texas oil patch. Finished high school outside of Wichita, Kansas. He enlisted in the Army after 9/11. He's a multi-tour combat veteran. Now, there are all kinds of veterans, but not all veterans are combat veterans. Robert received a Purple Heart and a Bronze Star. He's university trained in business, finance, and economics. He's an investor. He's an entrepreneur. He's a political analyst and an activist. He's a spiritual warrior. Welcome, Robert Stewart.
Oh, thank you, Vincent. Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. Robert, do you want to share the story of how we met?
The time we met, we were in Kansas City, Missouri, and you were giving your presentation on the big lies, and I got to see you and Dr. Wallach and Dr. Miller, and just I'm sure several of our listeners too. And it was a great time, and the information that you have on your broadcast that you present in your presentation, it's why I call in. It's why I'm here now. I really appreciate it. I've learned a lot as a student of yours and of the senior instructors especially. I can probably name most of them, but I don't want to forget anybody. I really enjoy what you guys do, and you've raised my consciousness, I would say, and that's kind of my mission as well. Like why I've agreed to come on is to try to do the same for anyone listening. If I can help them do the same, that's what I want to do. But meeting you, Vincent, that was great, and we went and had dinner, and we got to just talk about stuff. We talked about Trump before we knew what Trump was going to do, and it was really nice meeting you.
Well, thanks so much. And so, Robert, here's my question that I'd like to ask you in front of the entire class.
Okay.
You got a chance to meet Dr. Joel Wallach. You got a chance to meet Dr. Richard Allen Miller, and we spent some time. You spent some time in seminars. Would you say that we are just as we sound on the air, or are we different in person? I mean, are we putting on airs? Are we not living up to what you thought we would be like, or are we like what you hear?
Well, you're absolutely what you are, and that level of honesty from all of you is these these days is not something you can find. A lot of people try to put on a type of a type of mask, let's say. And, when you're dealing with the consciousness of Rick Miller, there's no act going on. I mean, Rick Miller can hold an idea in his mind that is absolutely what most the average person would consider insane, and this is a very intelligent man, and he's not, the level of consciousness, I guess what I'm saying is, he's not, like, he really is who he is because he is so developed in himself. He knows who he is, and he's not, if you tell him the sky is purple, and he would actually momentarily probably hold in his mind, well, maybe I'm just colorblind. It's that level of being able to be intellectually honest and be able to say, well, I know this, I don't know that, or things like that. And a lot of people, they want to protect their ego, they want to look a certain way, and there's nothing like that going on. When you hear Gwyneth Isaacs talk on the radio, I mean, if you can't tell what level of consciousness that is, then you don't know what you're listening to. And you have people like Dr. Shealy that, I heard about Dr. Shealy taking down hospitals in the 60s, right? I was born in 83, so I imagine these people, I'm kind of shy to be on the radio in the same platform they share. But, there is amazing people. I would love to meet Dr. Shealy someday. I'd love for him to give me a physical, I mean, what a great guy. And just all of you, every single one of you. And I think that has to do with you, Vincent, because you pick people, right? So you're kind of the organizer, and the amount of information that goes through you and what you do. I mean, you're the node, the center of it. So, it's great. To have me on, Vincent, I am honored that you would have me on as an instructor, and, to be on the same platform or allowing me to be here. I really thank you.
Well, it's my pleasure, and I'm delighted that you're with us. And I'll tell you how I do it, class. When I was new in radio over 6 years ago, I got some advice from the front office at the radio station. I actually was broadcasting from a radio station, not a network, just a radio station in Springfield, Missouri. And they told me what makes good radio. Good radio is rapid fire, point, counterpoint, argumentative almost. That's good radio in their mind.
Carbon 60. Sounds like I need some of that.
Yeah, that's what they said is good radio, and I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to have someone I disagreed with on the air and fight it out, during the broadcast. That's not what I wanted to do. I thought life is too short, and the information that we're trying to send out over the airwaves and over the wires and the fiber optics and satellites. I thought it was too important what our instructors are saying to waste time on the other side of the equation. And so I only put people on the air with me whom I like and whom I agree with. So, for example, when I talk to someone and I'm evaluating whether that person, in my mind, should be on the air at USA Prepares or not, it has to be someone I like. If I don't like that person, there's no chance that person's going to be on the air. None. And that, where does that come from? That comes from the first interview. So, for example, let's say a person's looking for a job. That person, the decision that is going to be made of whether that person is going to be hired or not happens as the person walks through the door. We'll say the boss, the guy who's going to hire the candidate, will make the decision yes or no right then and there within seconds of the candidate walking through the door. The rest of the interview is just to make sure that the boss got it right the first time, meaning was he right within the first couple of seconds? And it's just confirmation. Yeah, that guy, I like that guy right away, and or gal, and we'll just confirm that what I thought was correct. Okay, that's what the rest of the interview is about. And that's kind of how I operate here at USA Prepares. If I don't like someone, they're not coming on the air because I don't. Now, it may seem like it's a dictatorship. Okay, it is. And why is it?
Yes.
Because I don't want to subject our class to someone I don't think is going to be appropriate, someone who doesn't have the correct manners, the protocol, someone who's not polite, someone who's spewing out disinformation or bad information. I'm not willing to subject our class to lies. And that's kind of how I operate. So I just wanted to share that with our class. That's the MO that I use for those who are on the air. Class, if you hear them on the air, I like them. It's as simple as that.
Well, thank you, Vincent. And
it's absolutely true.
There's still a lot of responsibility in dictatorship. So that's on you, and so you have to vet people, and if you don't want to present information that you think is wrong or contributes to the problems we have in society and just in general,
Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I do when I talk to people for the first time, let's say I call them up, or they call me, and I'll ask them, how can we make the broadcast better? No one has ever said to me, well, that guy you have on, boy, he's kind of a jerk. No one has ever said that. No one. And that's because we're very careful who we put on the air. We want to make sure that we don't mislead our class. We don't want that to happen. We don't want them to spend money on the wrong things. We don't want them to waste money. We don't want them chasing things that just aren't going to work out for them. So we're very careful about that. So that being said, you have a couple stories or scenarios that you'd like to talk about.
Yeah, the one of the besides Carbon 60, which I listened, that was fascinating. I'm gonna have to order some of that. I thought the best way to start all this off would be to get in an argument basically with the host and with a senior instructor, Rich Sheben, was kind of my plan. So it is maybe out of the norm for you talking about minimum wage and velocity of money. I had called in during that topic earlier this week, and I wanted to. And the problem with this conversation really is that Rick Sheben is not wrong. Okay, but it's. I am trained in economics, and not just economics 101, but all the way up. And what I can say is that there's a lot of stuff that they teach you that is just, this is how it is, everybody. And it's not necessarily so. At the same time, when Rick Sheben makes his points, and he's like, no, Robert, this is how it is, the problem is that he's right also. And so, if he's going to tell me that they're going to get to a threshold where they're going to innovate and they're going to, have the computers and AI, he's right. And so, it's not that I'm going to necessarily win the argument, but it's a great thought exercise.
Okay, well, let's continue when we come back. And we're going to be discussing the velocity of money. The velocity of money when we come back. Robert Stewart. Robert Stewart is with us. He's joined the faculty of USA Preparedness. This is the first time he's been on the air as an instructor. He's called in many times. Robert, before we get into the discussion with the velocity of money, very quick question. So you were in one of my seminars in person in Kansas City, Missouri, and I talked about big lies. Big lies.
Yes.
Did you hear me say anything during that seminar that you thought was not true?
No, me personally, Vincent, I go much farther than you in that regard, and I'm sure maybe someday we can get into that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But no, in a lot of ways, you do what I need to learn how to do better, and that is that you ask questions. So you say, okay, guys, and you have maybe just a more seasoned way of getting to some of these very serious topics that. For some people, Vince, that's the thing. I mean, some people, if you try to tell them some things like that are, it can be kind of frightening. It's frightening to everybody, right? But some people, it scares them so bad they don't even want to consider that you might be right. It's very scary. So you have a very good way about gently saying, well, look at this picture of the moon lander. Now look at this. And you just, and just showing, does this look like something that could land on the moon? It's very interesting. And, you don't say that anything did or didn't happen, but the way you present it's great. So no, everything you said, the chemical trails in the sky, I'm in Kansas, and I tell you what, I wish they'd stop spraying us in Kansas, if anyone can hear me. How about you stop spraying us with whatever? They talk, the government has admitted to solar radiation management. You can go online. You can see CIA Director Brennan. You can see him say, yes, we dim the sun to save the planet. We're spraying the sky. He said it. Okay, that's our government admitting it. Now, what else are they spraying? Well, hey, man, who knows what these people are doing? But you're blocking out the sun. I mean, what? How about you just stop blocking out the sun as well? Maybe we need the sun. I don't know. I don't know what's going on, but they have admitted to they call it these certain names. They say there's global warming, so we got to block out the sun. It's like, my goodness. I don't think blocking out the sun is the way to go, but that's just me.
Okay, let me just add to that for a second.
Sorry, I go up
so
on
yes,
a rant. Just like
that's a really good point. It's a good point. So yesterday, I was out in the field, and we were moving hay, as I mentioned previously, and we looked up, and we saw two jets flying side by side, laying down chemtrails, like railroad tracks. Wow, that's kind of unusual. Normally you see crisscross patterns, all over the sky, but not two parallel jets simultaneously laying down chemtrails. We saw that yesterday. Then we moved some more hay and looked up. Then we saw the most unbelievable thing, something we've never seen before. And I think this pilot is probably going to get fired for this. This guy was laying down chemtrails in a circle, literally 360-degree circle. So where he started the circle, he ended the circle, and then he climbed in altitude and laid down another chemtrail on top of that circle with another circle. I'm talking like a corkscrew. Okay? This guy was flying in a corkscrew pattern in a circle that just kept winding, kind of like a slinky, if you will. And then he decided, well, that's enough of that. And then he did a figure eight. This guy is telling us this is not normal jet airliner traffic. He's saying nobody flies a jet plane round and round like that and then does figure eights. Now, you might do that with a Piper Cub or a Cherokee or a Cessna, having fun, learning how to fly, touch and goes and that kind of thing. But you're not going to fly a commercial jetliner, wasting fuel, going around in a huge corkscrew pattern and then doing figure eights. That's not going to happen. So I think this one particular pilot, maybe it was his last day, and he was saying, look, and we have a picture of it. And I haven't seen the final image of it, but if it looks good enough, I'll put it on the website so you can see that I'm not kidding. I am not kidding. That's what really happened. So Robert, you bring up a good point, and we digress. But you want to get back to the velocity of money?
Sure. Let's try to get that going. I think it's a good way to get into money in general and just a lot of other things. I guess maybe after the break, we'll jump into that.
Yeah, let's do it. Robert's with us, Robert Stewart, and you heard him call in, and now you're hearing him as an instructor. In class, if you'd like to be an instructor, call in, and if we really like what you have to say, chances are you can be an instructor too. Robert Stewart and I are going to talk about velocity of money. Very quickly, velocity of money is the rate at which money is exchanged or changes hands. Velocity of money. Robert?
Hey, Vince. I'll try to get through this quickly because it can be kind of a boring topic talking about money. But let me just first start off by saying I am a no minimum wage guy. That's my position. There should be no minimum wage. So that's kind of, to start with. I define velocity of money essentially as what is it? It's the number of goods and services obtained using the same dollar bill. So, for instance, you go into the Hamlet, you have your truck fixed. That money goes to the mechanic. The mechanic goes home. He pays somebody to mow his lawn. The lawnmower goes to the grocery store, buys milk. and then that clerk, she can go and do whatever she does with her paycheck. And essentially what you've done is, let's just imagine it's the same amount for all these things. Obviously, they'd be different prices. But what you have now is a fixed truck, a mowed lawn, and a thing of milk, a gallon of milk. So essentially you've obtained these values for the exact same dollars, essentially. Now, what's happened is a bunch of value has been created for that money. So money acts essentially as a medium of exchange. It's really not the money we want. We want the value we can get with it. Okay. So, that's how I would define velocity of money. And then I'm a no minimum wage guy, but I'm going to stay in the real world right now because we do have a minimum wage. The minimum wage is $7.25 nationally. So because we are in that structure and have been for some time, it's kind of it's where we're at, what we're doing, how everybody kind of works off at this point. So what I'm kind of challenging is the idea that raising this minimum wage has the exact effects that are claimed, and these have been presented to me through economics courses, and they talk about raising prices, and they talk about all these things that would happen, and what I've done is I've got some questions for you, Vince, because you were a hiring manager. And I just want to ask you some of these and kind of see what you would say about this and kind of how it would work with raising the minimum wage from where it is. And the first question is as a hiring manager, do you hire people you don't need?
Absolutely not. However, the companies that I have worked for have done that. So if you're talking about me as an entrepreneur in control of my organization, my corporation, I absolutely would never hire someone that I absolutely did not need. Never would happen. I also am a no minimum wage guy. I believe the marketplace should set the wages for everybody. Now, let me just give you one example that we actually did hire somebody that we didn't need. So the boss came to me when I was in the banking environment, and he said, Vinny, we've got, and I'm paraphrasing, this is in the 1980s, he said, Vinny, we're going to get you some help. And I'm thinking, I already have a team. I built the team of people that I really like. They're doing a great job. We really work well together. Now, when I say I like this team, people may say, well, you know, you don't necessarily have to work with people you like. Well, in my case, if I'm the boss, and I only hired people I like. I only put people on the radio whom I like. Okay? So for me, it works better if we like each other and we have the same point of reference. If we agree to the same values, it makes everything better for me and my team. And we were able to do more with less than any other team of our comparable size in the marketplace because we liked each other, we worked well together, and we were hand-selected. Now, let me give you one other point of reference. So when I hired somebody, I would find the best three candidates. Okay? First of all, I'd have to like them, as I mentioned many, many times. When I found the best three candidates for the position that we needed, what I would do is I would invite the entire team to come with me to lunch. And I'd say, hey guys, you know that we've all agreed that we need to bring someone else on because we have more duties and responsibilities and we need more programming technology. So I don't want to make that decision. I'd like you guys to make that decision. So we'll all go to lunch if you agree with that, and we'll take the three candidates to lunch and you pick the one that you like. Because you're going to have to work with this person as well. That's the way I did it. And it always worked well. Because, number one, I didn't bring the new guy on or the new gal on, and my team didn't feel threatened because I brought the new person on. I didn't do it. They did it. My team decided whether they wanted the new person or not. And it was based on need, not based on let's build a bigger empire. However, there was a time when the boss said, Vinny, we're going to bring someone on to help you. Okay, so what's this person going to do? Well, special projects. Oh, what's that? Well, whatever we need them to do. What is that? Are we not delivering on time? I mean, well, Vinny, we're going to get you some help. What this was a political move to hire a guy whose father was going to most probably become mayor of the city. Okay? That's what happened.
Sounds like a smart move that any corporation would make.
Well, that's what they did. They hired this guy, and he had zero computer experience, and he was in the highest technology computer department in the bank. The highest technology in the bank. And we hired a guy with zero computer experience because of who he was, who his biological father was.
Yes.
So to answer your question, I've never hired anyone that I didn't need. But bank
maybe
did.
in a larger corporation, they would need alternates, and they would, people get sick, things happen. So, yeah, in a larger corporation, maybe. Okay, just kind of opposite of that, do you fire people that you need?
No. However,
okay.
Well, let me be quite clear on this. Do I fire people that I need? No. However, there was one person who decided that he wanted to help himself to company inventory. Okay? He thought it would be better off at his house than in the company. Now, had he said to me, hey, Vinny, would it be okay if I borrowed this, for a month or so? I just need it for a while. Would it be okay if I borrowed it? That would have been okay. I would have agreed to that. But having borrowed it without telling me and concealing it from me and lying to me, that didn't set too well. So what happened? He got fired.
That's what happened. It'd be hard to trust him, and that's how that goes.
Yep.
It does come into play here if you, as far as getting rid of people, firing people. Rich Sheben's point that it becomes financially, economically viable to innovate out of innovate a person out of a job using new technology that we have, these touch screens for McDonald's, things like that you hear about, and so there is certainly an effect of raising the minimum wage where you do get to a threshold where a big company like a McDonald's might say, hey, let's fire a bunch of people and we'll move to these machines and we can hire the professionals to put them in and everything, and they can eventually make money on that, where a mom and pop might not be able to do such an innovation. But that's so there is problems with raising the minimum wage, but in terms of driving money velocity, in terms of pushing down wages to the lower and middle class, because raising the minimum wage would also have an effect on wages that are upstream of that as well. If you can get a job here for $15, you would have to compete as an employer. If you have a more complicated job for somebody, you have to pay them $20 an hour or whatever the case may be. So it would have that effect now, but then, all the other things that come into that, the innovation. Some people do argue that you would see these raising of prices, and I want to argue against that as a thing of a matter of raising the wages of the bottom 93%. As Rich Sheben said, the thing about raising prices is prices are a matter of cost. Obviously, it matters, but there's also market factors in pricing. Pricing is actually very complicated. It has a lot to do with psychology. It has a lot to do with the culture, and it's very interesting when you get into it. And if you imagine a company like McDonald's in the market position they have, if they were to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, and all of a sudden McDonald's is looking at this high cost, high employment, operation, they could try to raise in a developed market, the fast food industry, the industry of food. They could try that, but can you imagine if the prices at McDonald's were the same as the prices at Applebee's, or let's say a higher level food provider? Much less people would eat at McDonald's. Basically, McDonald's would go away if they tried to raise prices in a developed market.
They've already tried that. McDonald's has already tried raising prices. They did it in a couched way. They did it by changing the menu. Back when there was whip inflation, now with Gerald Ford, McDonald's was stuck with the inability to raise prices because the government said you will not raise prices and you will post prices for what things cost. Now, I worked at an auto parts store at that time, and we had to post the prices of many of our products or many of the items we were selling. Here's how much they cost. And we had this pledge to not increase prices. Well, what McDonald's did was very clever. They came out with a new product. They called it the Big Mac. So what typically happened was you would take a beef patty and a bun with a top and a bottom, and you'd spray some ketchup on there and put maybe some onions and 2 little pickles, and that was a hamburger. Well, let's say that cost 30 cents. Okay. Well, what McDonald's did was they came out with the Big Mac, which had not 1 piece of meat but 2, and didn't have 4 pieces of bread, meaning 2 tops and 2 bottoms of the bun. It had a top, a middle, and a bottom. So they used not twice the amount of bread, but 1.5 times the amount of bread, the 2 patties, and they charged more than double for it. And they called it the Big Mac. Now they put a little bit of lettuce and some sauce on it, but they charged way more than it would have cost if it was just 2 hamburgers. That's the point of raising prices. We'll be right back. So, class, what happened during the high inflation days of Gerald Ford, President Ford, McDonald's changed the menu, and they took like 2 30-cent hamburgers, and they made less of a hamburger than 2 hamburgers, and they called it a Big Mac. So instead of 30 cents plus 30 cents for each of the hamburgers, equaling 60 cents, they made a Big Mac and charged 70 cents for it. So they, in effect, raised the prices with this new menu item. Lately, McDonald's has been experimenting with changing the menu and raising prices, and it's not working. As a matter of fact, it's got the franchises almost in a position of revolt. So McDonald's had to back down, lower the prices to make the franchises happy because sales were down. So that's what happened. Robert?
Yes, Vincent, absolutely. Just to get to the point of it all, and basically my argument to you and Rich, and that is that raising the minimum wage would equal more value to the bottom 93%, meaning that essentially if you were a minimum wage worker, I know you're not, Vincent, but if you were, and that allowed you to get your truck fixed when they raised that minimum wage, and then the mechanic had the money and on, it is a money velocity multiplier that when you shove the money down the pyramid, that those people spend the money into the economy. And the best corporations that provide the best services in terms of votes with those dollars usually rise to the top. And so that's what happens. Here's Rich Sheban's argument, though, and like I said, Rich Sheban's right. So Rich Sheban is a brilliant man. I'm not arguing with Rich Sheban too hard here, but what would happen basically is that the value would move from the investor class to the wage earners, the value creators is what would happen. Now, what would the investor class do in response? Okay, so then you have all the arguments of Rich Sheban. They can move offshore, on and on. They're not, the investor class is not dumb people. They're going to figure out a way, right? And so that's all of that is political, though. You know, we have America First going on. We have some other things. It depends on if you allow companies to kind of, do what they do in all the strategies they have. They're international, some of them, and that is a difference. I mean, raising the minimum wage on a mom and pop is different than the Dow 30. It is, and that's all this is true. But let me just say real quick, and I'm pretty much done with this, is if very conservative estimates, if we had kept pace with inflation today, and this is like 1938 time frame till today, the minimum wage should be $20 or right about. And then if it had kept pace with inflation from 1913, when we became infected, with inflation, it'd be about $45 an hour would be the minimum wage right now. And so if you can imagine your poor neighbor making $45 an hour, the thing is, Vincent, he's probably going to be able to buy lots of stuff from you, too. And it's, I know this kind of sounds like a fantasy, $45 an hour minimum wage, but that's what the math says. And, I don't know what that would mean exactly, but it could mean that we would have a very prosperous society compared to what we have now. It really could mean that. That's my argument.
You know, as you say this, I was thinking, Rich even uses the term the bottom 93%, and I like it. I'm part of the bottom 93%, and everybody I know is part of the bottom 93%. But why is that? Why are we the bottom 93%? Well, I asked Bob Chapman that. Bob Chapman was one of our senior instructors. He is no longer with us. He has passed on. And he was a brilliant man. And he said very simply, it's taxes and inflation. The reason why the middle class is being decimated is because of higher and higher and higher and higher taxes and a hidden tax called inflation. That the reduced purchasing power of the Federal Reserve accounting unit dollar, I call the fraud, F-R-A-U-D, Federal Reserve accounting unit dollar, because of the reduced purchasing power, which we call inflation, that has helped decimate the bottom 93% as well as increase taxes. And that's why I teach a class on how to start your own business and take the same tax deductions that the rich or the investor class take. And you need to start your own business. And you can go to USA Prepares on YouTube and listen to those 7 or 8 hours of broadcast talking about how to pay less in taxes. You need to do that. You need to starve the beast. Robert, thank you so much for being with us today and sharing your thoughts and information. Robert Stewart in Kansas.